So if you think that every single person is attracted to confidence or humor, I am going to stop you right there. Because most of the time, you're not just attracted to these general traits in a person, you are attracted to the nervous system and subconscious pattern that they trigger for you. So in this video, I'm going to break down what each attachment style claims they are most attracted to in other people in a relationship and says that they want, which is on some level true. But then I'm going to tell you who they often end up with and who they end up investing in at a subconscious level long term. The number one thing you need to understand for this video to make everything make sense and click into play is that we end up investing in people who are most familiar to us, because to our subconscious mind, which is responsible for 95+% of our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions, choices on a daily basis, to our subconscious mind, familiarity equals safety equals survival. And ultimately, we are survival wired. So literally, you will see people be like, oh, I want the emotionally available person. But if what's most consistent and familiar to them from their past and their history is somebody who's unavailable, they'll consciously say they want that. Their logical reasoning mind, that 3 to 5% of them that makes up their beliefs and thoughts and choices and opinions, will say, oh, I want the emotionally available person, or I want the trustworthy person, or whoever it might be. But at the end of the day, you are going to invest in what feels the most familiar because you see it as safe and thus equating to your survival. What is most familiar to you is the way you treat yourself. So if you're critical to yourself, you'll often end up with a critical partner. If you are violating your own boundaries because you're chronically people-pleasing, you will end up with people who violate your boundaries in the relationships around you. If you're the type of person who you're constantly anxious and worried about how much time you have to yourself, you're probably going to end up with some anxious partner. So I want you to just understand that on principle first, but now we're going to really break it down. So by attachment style, I'm going to first tell you what each person says they're looking for the most. And on one hand, what they do respond the most positively to and what they're needing to feel fulfilled in a relationship, but then at a deeper level, what they often choose instead. Now, if you didn't already know, there are 4 attachment styles. These are essentially relationship styles, and every person has one. And they determine how we tend to react and love and what we need and what we fear in relationships. I'll just give you a quick rundown for like 2 seconds. Our securely attached individuals tend to be the most secure and stable. It's ideally the attachment style we want to become if we aren't already, and do the work to actually get there and rewire. Then we have an anxious attachment style who can sometimes be needy and clingy in relationships, although they're very lovely and sweet and charismatic and charming. Then we have dismissive avoidant attachment styles who tend to be basically the opposite. They're much more avoidant. They fear commitment. They always need to create space and minimize their attachment needs to feel safe and in control. And fearful avoidant attachment styles who are basically the hot and cold partner. They kind of pinball back and forth between their anxious and avoidant side. And that's because they have competing associations and conditioning about love, both seeing it as a really good thing, but also a scary or threatening thing. So let's dive in. First attachment style, we'll pick secure. Securely attached people, they are most attracted to consistency and emotional availability in other people. They want people kind. They want people who are accountable, who are clear, who are straightforward, because their subconscious mind is not addicted to uncertainty. So uncertainty, chaos, hot, cold, push, pull, games do not feel attractive to a securely attached person. In fact, those things are a turn off. And you can actually see that because the way they also treat themselves at a subconscious level is they are consistent with themselves. They treat themselves with care, accountability. They end up having compassion for themselves. So they're attracted to people who have compassion for them as well. So you see this really safe way that they invest in relationships. They're attracted to people who are aligned with them. And obviously, that is why statistically, securely attached people don't just report having the longest lasting relationships, but also report being the most fulfilled in those long lasting relationships. Now, let's go and break it down by the other attachment styles. Anxious attachment styles, they often report consciously. These are the things they want the most, and they say they're looking for in a partner and that they sort of wish for in their fantasy. They are most attracted to consciously. So this is their logical reasoning mind, not who they invest in and end up with. Just to be very clear, those are 2 very different things. Consciously, they say they're looking for people who will give them certainty, who will be emotionally available, who will be responsive, who will make them feel like they are wanted, a priority, who make them feel like they're admired or they're really deeply cared for. They'll always say like, this is my ideal partner. Unfortunately, what is often happening is their subconscious comfort zone of familiarity, and that's what they're most attracted to in other people, are the way they treat themselves. And the shadow side of this is that anxious attachment styles, they're so people pleasing, which means they self-abandon, they dismiss and diminish their own needs. They put themselves last on the totem pole. They violate their boundaries to please other people. And so oftentimes, so unfortunately, and this makes me sad for anxious attachment styles because they're like so lovely and loving and they put their full heart into relationships and they pour into people around them. And then they say they want a partner that's going to do the same for them. But unfortunately, they tend to pick from that subconscious comfort zone. And the way they treat themselves is to put themselves last, to sometimes criticize themselves or put themselves down, to violate their own boundaries. And so oftentimes they're unfortunately attracted to people who are not really going to invest fully in them or make them a priority, who are not necessarily going to show up in a healthy way and really invest in reciprocity in a relationship or be accountable and do the work and prioritize their feelings and needs. And so that ends up being this really double-edged sword where anxious attachment styles are left feeling like, wait, why can't I just find this emotionally available partner that I say that I want? Why do I keep picking unavailable people or people who are not ready to settle down? And that's usually why. Now, I will tell you that subconscious comfort zone, that way you treat yourself, that is a solvable problem. You can rewire it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I just wanted to pop in here and let you know we are doing a 7-day free trial to the All Access Membership Pass at PDS, which means you get access to literally everything inside of the school. And this includes the 4 live webinars I do with our students every single week. And on top of that, you get access to all of our different courses. We have over 55 different courses on relationships, communication, boundaries, emotional mastery, guilt and shame, learning your needs, so many different facets that are really important to master our lives and feel really good about our lives going forward. And last but not least, there's a daily community event. We have trained facilitators and coaches who are in there doing that work, showing up to support you on your journey every single day. Please join me on the other side. Come check it out. See if it's a fit for you. I'd love to see you there. Go ahead and sign up by clicking the link in the description box below. Next one, fearful avoidant attachment style. What they feel most attracted to in other people. Number one, they say consciously that they are looking for somebody who is available emotionally, for a lot of depth, who like to go deep into conversations and openness, who's safe, consistent, trustworthy, strong, and self-aware, and also independent, who respects and honors their freedom, but also loves novelty and exploration and closeness, right? You see these kind of competing sides to the fearful avoidant personality where they want that depth and intimacy and connection and closeness, but their other needs are to have their freedom, autonomy, independence as well, and novelty. They say they want passion and somebody who's always learning and growing. These are all things that fearful avoidants will tell you, and these are their needs, right? They need these things in regards to relationships from an integrated attachment theory point of view. However, what you'll often see is they pick people who mirror back to them. You guessed it, the subconscious comfort zone of how they treat themselves. And so a lot of times, because fearful avoidants put a lot of pressure on themselves, a lot of expectation on themselves, similar to anxious attachment styles, they're usually so busy people pleasing that they put themselves last, but they sometimes also swing the pendulum to the other direction and they like suddenly put themselves first and kind of push everybody away and come back to themselves. This means fearful avoidants are usually attracted to people who don't really know what they need, aren't really available for their needs, sometimes are takers more than givers because fearful avoidants are so generous and they pour so much into other people, similar to anxious attachment styles. But also the extra layer to this is that fearful avoidants are quite likely to often be attracted to other fearful avoidants because their own subconscious mind and all of their core wounds puts their nervous system into a state of chaos and uncertainty. So often fearful avoidants attach to other people who create more chaos and uncertainty in their lives. And so you'll see that sometimes fearful avoidants confuse like unavailability or somebody who's like a little bit advantageous with mystery and somebody who they feel most familiar around. And so oftentimes they're not really getting that consistency, that healthy trust, that stability that they truly need in order to stay in a relationship. And from an integrated attachment theory point of view, these are the needs that we have to have stabilized in relationships to really make them work if we want to rewire and heal. And so that's a common theme that you'll see for fearful avoidance. Let's do our last one, dismissive avoidant attachment styles. What they say they're most attracted to, and this is probably the one that's going to confuse you and also blow your mind the most, which is dismissive avoidant attachment styles say that they want somebody who honors their freedom, their autonomy, their independence, who's low pressure, who's independent themselves, somebody who's supportive, who empathizes with them, who accepts them. These are big needs from an integrated attachment theory point of view for the dismissive avoidant. And what you'll see is that with all of these needs they say they consciously want and they do logically want, and if somebody meets those needs for prolonged periods of time and they actually do the work with that person, this is very healing for them. However, if you pay close attention, dismissive avoidance, and I've been saying this for years and years, they are in their shadow, they are in an anxiously attached relationship to self. They are constantly anxious and concerned about how much time they have to themselves. Do they have enough time to re-regulate, to be with themselves, to do the things they need, to feel okay, to come back to center, to unplug from the outside world and like recharge? And they're so preoccupied with the amount of time that they spend with themselves and on their own that oftentimes they're truly in this kind of anxious relationship to self. So, as you guessed it, they often end up being attracted to and investing in other anxious people. They often like people subconsciously and invest in people who are like always trying to have more time with them, who are trying to be around them more, who are preoccupied with like their approval and if they're going to show up. And accidentally, sometimes these individuals, as loving as they tend to be, accidentally violate the dismissive avoidance need for boundaries and autonomy, sometimes don't understand them or make them feel understood. So while we consciously want something, sometimes we subconsciously invest in almost its opposite until we actually do the work. I hope this is helpful for you and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please subscribe to this channel. I would love to have you here. I put daily content out here every single day about attachment styles and healing in our subconscious mind and nervous system. And thank you so much for stopping by and for watching.